Hi, and welcome to Series 2 of the Pen to Publish podcast with your hosts, Alexa Whitten, author, typesetter, and independent publisher, and
Alexa Tewkesbury, author, editor, and proofreader. Well, welcome to another episode of the Pen to Publish podcast. And this is actually the final episode in Series 2. We are so excited today because we have Joseph Millson, the actor, the writer, the skateboarder, the all-round incredible, lovely person to talk to today. Now, Joseph Millson, if you haven't come across Joseph Millson, I don't know where you've been, quite honestly, because he's done so much. He has been in so many films. The Dead 2, Dragonheart Vengeance, Casino Royale, The Chameleon. Oh, incredible film, The Chameleon. Scary, but incredible. Abraham's Point. On television, he's done Banished, The Last Kingdom, The Sarah Jane Adventures, Campus, Holby City. And in theatre, he's appeared at the Royal Exchange, the RSC, the Globe, the National, the West End. In fact, before this wretched pandemic hit, he was actually Mr. Banks in the West End in Mary Poppins, which I just missed by seeing by a whisker because it all closed. And anyway, but so seriously, he's been everywhere. And then earlier this year, he published an amazing memoir. And it's a memoir of the first 10 years of his life as an actor. And it's the first 10 years because there's so much in that first 10 years. And then there'll be another 10 years. I think you're writing that at the moment. And then presumably it will go on because your acting life is just going to go on and on. So you get to see it in sections. First of all, hello.
Hello. And after that, I think there may only be 3 books because I think after the sound of that, I should retire.
You'll be
I'm in the 3rd decade of it now. I think I'll just stop.
You'll be a full-time writer. So how long did it take to write your memoir? And did you have a plan or did it just unfold?
I promise. I know we haven't got too long to do this, so you'll have to believe me that these will be the short versions. I never know the real answer, so it's helpful to work out why it started. This sounds glamorous. It really wasn't. There are bits of Los Angeles that aren't glamorous, trust me. We were living in Los Angeles, various reasons, and in a very hot, sweaty, grubby bit of the valley. And I had trouble. I had a work visa, then I didn't. Now that's another story. And I was stuck. You know, I couldn't even get a bar job. And it was tricky and I had nothing to do. And Sarah Jane, my wife, was trying to get work and had a little bit of work. But we were kind of a bit broke and stuck in a little hot apartment. And the phrase, I'm allowed to swear mildly, am I?
Of course.
Okay, yeah. The phrase, you've got to write this shit down, had been said to me so many times. I collect disaster stories. I seem to collect and remember disaster stories more than most in my career. And I said, it might be fun to write. And so that was all it was. To begin with, she said, well, why don't you put your money where your mouth is? Why don't you go to a cafe? You know, you've got nothing doing. And try and just put a few of these things down. And that's what happened during a sort of 6-month period in 2000 and I'm going to guess 14, 15, that long ago. I started, it kept me busy. And I'd give my 3 or 4 pages I'd done a day to Sarah Jane to read. And if she laughed out loud at all, I was just made up. I was just so happy because she's quite a harsh critic. And I just kept going. But then life would get in the way. I got a thing called Banished, filming in Australia. That stopped my first flow of writing because I was so busy filming that. And then a few other things. And for about 4 years, it was something to keep me from going insane with boredom when I was between jobs. And but it grew like a patchwork quilt. Then I got busy. And then I have to say there was the only reason it ever got finished, really, Mary Poppins itself was a long job. I thought I was going to be doing it for over a year. And I have nice tea breaks built into that musical as Mr. Banks and a train ride in and out of London every day. It was a good reason to knuckle down and see if I could just get to the end. I got to the end. And then this lady, Alexa One, got involved. Can't even remember the sequence of events, but we'll talk about it in a minute, but then somebody was helping me edit it and it suddenly felt like it might actually read like a real book. And then the final push really was the silver lining of the first lockdowns, because I had no excuse anymore. You know, as soon as I even knew about the lockdowns, and the minute I was over a very, very bad case of COVID myself. But as soon as I was well enough, I knuckled down, finished it, we finished it and got it done. So It probably took 5 years, but that was very sporadic work. And it's interesting now embarking on book 2, trying to use a similar way in, but I have a desire to do it quicker, but it's a much harder book to write. I mean, so much harder. And I'm busy with other writing, amazingly. I'm on an MA master's degree right now in screenwriting, and I've got some paid writing work as writing the dialogue for terrible docudramas. Thing about the Colosseum, and we need a scene where Marcus Aurelius does this in a bath, and you know, okay. And so I managed to get myself writing a couple of episodes of that, which is amazing. My first ever actual paid screenwriting job, and so I'm quite busy, and it hangs over me every day. There's signs going, book two.
I think book 2.
But I'm hoping it will be a bit quicker than 5 years.
Yeah, book 2 generally tends to be much harder for some reason. I don't know why. Just it is. It's the tricky book, the tricky book 2 for sure. And I think lockdown has definitely given us a much. I help people publish books, and I've seen a massive increase in people suddenly having had the time to write a book. And I think that's what lockdown's given us. It's given us that time. Yeah. To write.
Well, it was saving grace in our house. We are 2 mid-40s people who have children from separate marriages previously, who are all just about grown up and left the nest or on the verge of, and they weren't with us all the time at all, and we would have gone insane. And Sarah Jane started writing as well, having never written before, but so very interesting.
Sarah Jane, for people listening, is Sarah Jane Potts, who's also a wonderful actor who I just fell in love with in Kinky Boots, because she's just wonderful. And Joseph and she met on Holby City, and
we actually met. It's a whole pop trivia. We actually met on a terrible pilot. One episode, hoping it'll be a series. BBC, the guy who wrote Cold Feet.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that series.
His new big show, this is 14 years ago, his big new show was a thing called Reunited. And there were 6 months of auditions. Every actor on earth wanted to be in this it's going to be the new Cold Feet. Sarah Jane and I both managed to get, I was the lead guy in this thing.
Oh, wow.
We filmed 1 episode. It was terrible. We were terrible. It was terrible. We knew on set, we were like, this isn't working. And they, with this big new show that everyone was so excited about, went out at about 1 a.m. on a Tuesday night on BBC One and was never seen again. So, but that's where we met, funnily enough. And then we did for quite a long time.
Okay. But there's so much more to say, I'm sure, with all of that. Where we met is I saw that you tweeted, I finished a book, and I very cheekily tweeted, would you like an editor? And within moments you'd messaged me and said,
well, just for people listening, I think this is interesting because I didn't understand. I had no reason to. I hadn't ever driven down those roads of what do editors really do. And I'd splurged out 90,000 words of waffle, and there were good things in it, and I didn't have money at the time, and Alexa was so generous starting out on our relationships. Look, let's just start some work. And as soon as we started, I cannot, and this might be one of the questions you're going to ask about, it's incalculable how editing helps. And some friends of mine are starting to write things now. The first thing I say, please employ an editor. And they say, what do you mean? What type of editor? Well, I'm still, not perfectly clear about copy edit and then editors, but having someone with a totally not attached to your life, cold outside eye to help start to train you into seeing where the chaff is, and where the wheat is incredible. And I used to be jumping up and down with excitement, and rather than the notes that came back never ever did anything except thrill me, because to be honest, when you're a new writer, the primary feeling is, holy shit, someone read it.
Yeah.
That's the main thing. When you get something back with red marks on, you go, they must have read it to make red marks, and somebody's read this other than my wife. And then when the red marks just, make sense. And if you stop telling yourself off, because to begin with, so many, obviously, and you go, oh no, oh God, how stupid. Oh God, I wish I went to school. Oh God, I wish I could.
I think that's very common, though. That's very common. Basically, all seasoned writers that do this for a living have editors.
Yeah, of course. It's wonderful. Well, it'd be like rehearsing. I did a one-man show once, and I could have done it on my own. I could have, because I had so many ideas. I knew what I wanted to do with it, but I hired a director I paid my own money to be in the room with me, to be a sounding board. And sure enough, it was invaluable. I think I said to Alexa one about how what it did was quite quickly develop my own inner editor. So as it got going, you could almost see, almost as you're writing, oh, I know what my editor's going to say about this. I can already see that. And why don't I do that myself? And there would be chunks erased or tightened. Certainly basic things like you start spotting when you're repeating words quite quickly. You start going, oh yeah, I always use that word. There's a thesaurus. Let's try and find another.
Which is very common. Repeating of words, really common. Cool.
Yeah. Start thinking of others. We all have limited vocabularies, and that's why starting to work with other people is so brilliant, especially with something as insular as novel writing or memoir writing, book writing. As screenwriting, I've already found out it is a collaborative enterprise anyway from the off. There's going to be producers' notes, directors' notes. If you're lucky, you co-write screenplays. I'm co-writing a film at the moment. It's the most joyous experience. There's no element of, I'm very precious about my bit. It's just wonderful.
As a first-time author then, what did it feel like when you actually published your book? Because obviously you're well known anyway, but was there a feeling of fear? Because your memoir, it's startlingly honest, and not only about the things that you went through, but the people that you worked with and yourself. You're quite harsh about yourself, and so it's a bit like having said to everybody, "Here I am, come get me." And was it scary?
A little bit. But perhaps with hindsight, I ought to have been a little more scared. But we did do some of the other people. I did also, I had edited, but also in the end to help get the technical files correct. I did employ the services a little of a company called Tandem Publishing, just to help get all those things right, And they insisted we did a lawyer's pass. So it was read briefly by someone with a lawyer's eye, because, it's no fun spending a few £1,000s of your own money on publishing a book and then ending up in court and owing someone 100,000.
Yeah.
So, and even then, and it was about, and that again was interesting and good writing exercise, because sometimes it was as simple as changing sentences to, it seemed to me as if, rather than X person did this,
right,
was just change the language to, from where I was standing, it looked as if, or it felt as if, and actually for a memoir, that's a little more accurate anyway. And it's not throwing mud. If you find you've written, she was this, he was this, that's just mudslinging and shit stirring and no fun. Whereas a memoir is about you, it's the evolution of your soul. So what you're saying is, this character felt like this. That was helpful. I think a couple of people may have got upset, but as Alexa says, my mission was to be even more brutal about myself than I ever was about anyone else. And there's as many heroes as villains in the book, But in book 2, again, that's part of the problem. Book 2, I may have to not be self-published. I may have to wait till I have a publishing house, because book 2 will need lawyers.
Oh, right.
I tell you now. And there's stuff that I said to Sarah Jane, I said, well, maybe I just don't write about that bit. She went, you were joking, aren't you? These are the best stories on earth. Or do we change the name, or do we? So we'll find out once it's written. I think I'll just write it and then see quite how dangerous it is. But it's equally as dangerous to me. So there's more extraordinary things with some famous people. But there's even more. I'm nervous because in the middle of book 2 is the worst year of my life.
Yeah, but they won't see it that way, though. They'll just see their point of view. So
exactly. So we'll see. We'll find a way around it.
And actually, I was going to ask you this earlier, but we've kind of got sidetracked. So you say in the middle of that is the worst year of your life. Did you find writing even that first 10 years, was that more of a challenge than you thought it would be once you got into it?
Yes, absolutely. You end up, it's such fun to begin with, and then you end up looking at it, and you've been honest, but actually you're looking at your young self and you think, well, that's fine, of course. And then you'll get to some moments where you suddenly are faced for the first time with a real choice. You think, right, I could tell the version of this that paints me in the best light, the version that I know I'd be happy for my children to read if ever they eventually read this. Or do I really have a look at myself, and it ends up being the best and cheapest therapy you can ever do if you're that honest. But it is very frightening, but you start to see patterns. If you write honestly, you start to see the circles you go round in, and eventually what was it that actually taught me something. And I was looking, because I'm having more trouble with book 2, I should have done this on book 1, I've started reading books about how to write memoirs. I didn't do that with the first one, but just a little. And there's some great things about, what is it about? And it is, all memoirs are about the evolution of the soul. And they have to have epiphanies, and they have to have breakthroughs. And you only get those if you look at your mistakes, fascinating.
And I also think, especially with memoirs, and this is something that I teach my writing clients as well, is that I think when you give those pieces of information or those bits of, learnings, you're then bringing it back to the reader. Because as lovely as we want to know about your life, but in order for it to be of an interest to the reader, then if you're going to give us some life lessons along the way, then that's even better for us as a reader.
Learn from someone else's mistakes.
Absolutely.
Or recognize your own in someone else and feel less alone, and I've done that. The holding frame was always work. There was no childhood. When I was 9, I had a cat, ... It starts on day 1 of doing this for a living, and each job, it's the shit that's stuck to the wall. So some jobs get 40 pages and some get half a paragraph, but that is the patchwork of a life, and it's really interesting. Book 2, I'm only maybe 100 pages into, and I've discovered something extraordinary. It was going to be called The Shit That Sticks to the Walls. It ended up being called Work and Other 4-Letter Words, because work, I've discovered, was my love affair. It was my best friend. Now I'm getting into the second decade of my career. I discovered what damage was done by workaholism, and how fascinating that work was my savior in the first 10 years, but actually going too far down the addiction to working led to all the trouble in my life. And now I'm actually just starting to find the balance, and have been blessed by not working for a year and working out, life without work is still life. Okay. It's really interesting. I think in a lot of walks of life, you don't have to be interested in acting. What the most rewarding responses I've had to the book have been from non-actors and people who aren't even theatre fans. And they said, well, this is just like I was as a doctor. It's exactly the same feeling of addiction to chasing work to feel fulfilled and like I've got purpose on the planet. Yeah, really interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, I think you've hit on a really important thing there with purpose. I think when you find what that purpose is, that's such a great motivator, isn't it, to then go on and be the driver behind whatever it is that you're going to do. And I mean,
if you're manic about it, it can leave damage in the
absolutely.
That's what I've discovered.
The term work-life balance, I think, is really important. And it's a bit of a cliche now, but it is so important. And I think a lot of people now are also, with the pandemic and those that have been furloughed, have come to understand actually the importance of the work-life balance. Did you find that you got stuck at all with your writing, or did you find this drip feed system worked for you?
It did kind of work, and also I've got a map, because so it's really interesting now trying to write a fiction novel. A memoir, I had a map. I had, amazingly, for those first 10 years, I had just these. I know this is audio, but I'm going to show you. I had the front page calendar of each page of my Filofax, which amazingly I had marked every job, and I saw where they overlapped, and amazingly they were just so helpful. And so annoyingly, I stopped doing that halfway through the second decade, ruining the day. Yes, it was really easy because there was always a map. And interestingly, I wrote sequentially. So if I hit a block, I stayed with that job. I stayed with that time in my life till I'd done it. And now I've hit some other blocks in book 2, and I'm wondering, well, maybe I should just jump to a bit that's easier to write and come back. But I feel it worked the first time. I should try again to just push through.
So do you just literally, if you know you're going to write a tough bit, do you just go, right, I can't finish today until that bit's done? Is that your mindset?
No, I will try to just give myself a kind of minimum word count, and it can be such rubbish that I throw it in the bin the next day. But so long as I've had a go, I kind of think, sometimes it's even 200 words. If I've managed to just do something, and the temptation always is to go back. Well, what I'll do when I'm feeling stuck, I'll just go back and edit some earlier bits to get yourself going. And that can work. Yeah. But I have to then push forward even an inch. I actually haven't written the bloody thing for about 4 weeks now, which is, so I'm going to get onto it this week. I want to tell people listening that we went off and had a wee break there. Well, and I've never had such an exciting wee break. I want to tell you, it was a posh wee. I sat down, and I sat there and went, my God, writing is the most exciting thing on earth. I used to be very into acting. I don't think I was as into acting as I am into writing. I'll tell you that
That's
now.
So interesting.
And the parallels, talking to you a bit about screenwriting earlier, I suddenly went, my God, it's all the same thing. My favorite on the module I'm on now on this master's degree, we're talking about the difference between want and need. And so, in films, you have an A story, which is the action. So Die Hard, got to stop the bomb going off, the A. But what actually gets to the people watching the film is the B, is the emotional connection to their partner at home or the children while the actions go. The bit that actually makes a film worth watching, or that when people say, the magic of cinema, it's because they went to see a film about X, but they came out feeling this that I wasn't expecting. And that's to do with the difference. So when we're writing characters, it's very useful to identify what their want is. And quite often, this is the different language to actors. Their want is, I want to be rich, or I want to be respected. I want to be, I want to whatever. It's something very, what we keep at the front of our brains. But we, the audience, might start to sense they need something very different. They need peace. They need reflection. They need sensitivity. And it'll be the child in the story that grabs their hand and they start to learn this lesson. It's the battle between want and need. And why I'm saying this is memoir writing is extraordinary because, and especially for me writing that book, the want was this very working class boy who didn't have a chance of ever becoming a successful actor. So I had to be so driven with that top want. What I want is to be respected by my peers. If I had to put it down on paper, that's what he wanted, the character of me. Not money, not fame, but I would love well-known actors to say, hey, that was good. That's all I wanted. But what I needed, as you start writing a memoir, you find out what you need is something different. And actually, it's only in book 2 that those two storylines will really crash. And the movie of my life hits a really dramatic third act, as it were, So anyway, that was my wee thought.
That was a lot to think about in a wee.
Yeah, it all happened.
Wow.
It was Alexa, it was a long wee.
Right, we've got to crack on. Come on, Alexa.
With would you say that writing a memoir then is a good place to start if you want to write, but maybe don't have the confidence to launch straight into fiction or screenwriting, or because I presume it gets you into that flow of regular writing?
Yes. I think it's a fantastic thing. I think it's Charlton Heston who said everyone on earth should write their memoir. And it's important to make sure the difference between memoir, as I understand it, and autobiography. So it can be a bit daunting. Autobiography would be the entire arc of a whole life. And memoir is seeing someone's life through the prism of one event or one little thing. 1 year, one holiday, a memoir is not as scary. If anyone sits and thinks, if I had to list 3 of the biggest events in my life, and they're so personal, but what were they? And they wrote up those as an exercise. The holiday with so-and-so, the time I lost my job, giving birth to my first child. Just write those up as 3 essays. You're in. And also it's an amazing challenge to turn your memory, like we were talking about screenwriting, into something other people will see and feel. Got to be a good place to start. I think it's also all the same. It feels, the exercise of entering your imagination. Now I'm trying to have a go at fiction and enter someone else's life it's interesting, but maybe it's a good place to start because you don't have to come up with a huge imaginative idea. It's already there. There's a map. Yeah, so maybe it is a good place to start. Yeah. And it's certainly good for your health, I think, to write something up about your life. Yeah.
We touched on before about the editing process, and it's really interesting to me that you said how enjoyable it was and that it kind of opened your eyes, because I was very fortunate a while before I saw your tweet and I proofread a memoir by Timmy Mallett. Do you remember Timmy Mallett? He did an amazing cycle ride in memory of his brother who had Down syndrome, and he recorded it all, but he also related it back to things in his life. But I had quite a few phone conversations with him because he'd been very involved in the editing and he wanted to be completely involved in the proofreading side as well. And he kept saying, "This is amazing. We're sitting here discussing one word. And he was so excited that you could actually have a conversation about one word. And
how much it changes a sentence.
Yes.
The flow of a paragraph. I mean, it is wonderful. Yeah.
Yes.
It's extraordinary, once you do some work. Go on, sorry, what's your question?
I suppose we've touched on it already, really, but you wrote me a really lovely review about my editing with your book, and you said in it that it had helped you to find your own inner editor.
Yes.
Do you think that's a natural response? Because I'm always very aware that some people might be a bit like,
well, it's really interesting, isn't it? I think constructive criticism, there are times in your life, I don't know how I'd have responded 10 years earlier. I might have been, again, I keep going to the analogy of my work as an actor, but, we have to take notes from directors all the time. And that early in your career, it can feel very personal because what they are criticizing, well, by definition, is you. And when you write, and if you're new to writing, it's such a private and frightening thing to hand over to someone, and that it can feel, I think I could understand how to begin with people might take things personally, but really, the mission in life is to slowly not take things personally. So again, that's another reason why I'd say do it, because the earlier you expose yourself to it, and those strange pinchy moments where something you loved, you're being asked to look at as whether it's needed, but just, take 10 seconds, nod, as they say in Madagascar, the penguins, smile and wave, boys, smile and wave. Just smile and wave, step back, have a think about it. And 9 times out of 10, you'll realize, my goodness, thank goodness they said that. And it is analogous to the acting, because it took me 20 odd years to discover that those very notes that directors gave me that felt like, oh, that's just ridiculous. That'd be ridiculous. What a terrible idea. That is, no. But what that feeling is an idea I wouldn't have had. And eventually it was like, thank you. That signal is now, oh, this might be really useful because it feels uncomfortable. It's probably useful. But, I'm just a little bit older and wiser. And I wonder, it must be tough for younger writers, that first thing.
Yeah. You've had as you've said, your job has mainly come with feedback.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Very harsh feedback at times. Yeah. Yeah.
So, but did you ever wonder why certain things had been changed, what Alexa One had done, and go, well, what's wrong with that?
Occasionally I would have those moments still. I would have, and sometimes there might have been moments where, Alexa and also the person who read it at Tandem gave me some, it wasn't quite as good. He did an edit as well. And sometimes just occasionally you'd whittle and you go, no, that is about taste. And sometimes you have to go, well, no, on this particular one, I actually understand what you're saying, but I'm still going.
Yeah. Okay. So did you have a couple of those emails backwards and forwards then? Because I didn't obviously see your book.
Yeah, I think we did have a couple, not many. I think I had more with the chap at Tandem. Alexa seem to understand some of the slightly left field approaches to expressing things quite instinctively. And the first person I spoke to, I'm going to name drop here, and apologies, but I have a couple of writer pals. Irvine Welsh has been a mate for a long time, and Russell T Davies I've known for a long time.
Wow.
And Irvine was the first person, actually, apart from Sarah Jane, to read any of the book. I sent him maybe 50 pages and went, is this, what is this? He said, I've no idea what it is, but keep going. And he said, listen, those moments when you think, oh shit, no, that's not how you're supposed to write. He said, write more of that. That's your voice. And the little inner critic that says, oh, that doesn't look like other books and that doesn't feel like other books. Obviously, it's got to be readable and palatable and digestible by a reader. But actually, he said, that will be your voice. So just keep that in mind. And I've got that up on my board still, you know, that stuff that doesn't seem like other people and maybe it's not right. Hang on, just be careful, because that might be what's individual to you.
But that's another thing that I talk to my clients about, is you have to get your point of differentiation right. You don't want to sound like everyone else.
Exactly.
You don't want that. Slightly different tangent then. So do you think people now take you more seriously now that you're an author?
Gosh, I don't think so, no.
You don't drop it in conversation?
No, I memoir. Don't. It doesn't feel that way. I get, it has been nothing but positive in my life, this thing existing. And what is wonderful is that it's not, wasn't in Waterstones with a big pub. It was self-published, but, you know, the reviews occasionally that I see, or friends who I never told my friends to buy my book. I might have dropped it on my social media for what it's worth, but I didn't know who bought it and who didn't. Amazingly, the thing has sold a few thousand copies on Amazon, and, you know, amazing. But I don't know who's got them. But I'll get a text every week or two from someone, a dear friend. I had one a couple of weeks ago, an actor who, he and I did not get on as actors when we worked together. He's very funny, but we got all right. We didn't. And he sent me this long voice message about how moved he was by the book and how extraordinary it was. And I was just blown away by it. And I've had a few of those people I wouldn't expect to be amazing.
That's interesting, because you touched on this earlier. You said you wanted to be not praised by your peers, but you wanted respected by your peers. And I think it sounds like then this book is almost been a vehicle, not only with your acting work, but this is another vehicle where you've got that.
Yeah. And do you know what? I haven't ever put those dots together. And I think you're right. In a way, it has solidified. And the interesting thing is maybe this is one of your other questions. I didn't know I was a writer, but my mum, it's really interesting. She said, well, of course. I said, what do you mean? She said, you were always writing. I said, was I? And she said, Jo, your memory is awful. She said, do you not remember? There's a couple of things she said. She said, do you not remember a dinosaur called Minerva? And I said, what are you talking about? I remember the book. My favourite book, because I was a voracious reader. I mean, real bookworm. I read books. If I liked a book, I would read it another 30 times. And I read a book called A Dinosaur Called Minerva as a kid. And I read that book till the bindings all fell apart. And I found the publishers. I mean, I was maybe 9 years old. Oh, there's people who published this. I wrote them a little letter with drawing of the dinosaur saying, when is another book? When is there another one of these? Please, I've read this one 20 times. And they wrote me a lovely letter back and said, well, the author, Tessa Kraling, wonderful child's author, she has written some other books, but there's no other Minerva books, I'm afraid. I was horrified. So my mum said, do you not remember what you did? You wrote A Dinosaur Called Minerva too, because you were desperate to read it. So I wrote a novel. She said the thing was like 50 pages long. Wow. With illustrations. And also, she then said, you know, you had a poem published when you were 13. What? And she dug out this poetry anthology I'd sent stuff to. And I had 2 short stories published in Skateboard magazines. The only narrative stories ever published in RAD magazine, which was a very big magazine. I kept pestering him. I'd written short stories about skateboarding. And he said, all right. And he published one and paid me 50 quid. So she said, you may have left it alone, but you were always doing, that was always part of you.
This acting career has obviously just been a precursor.
A blip. It's been a blip.
It's been a blip.
Certainly a blip.
You're not supposed to be an actor, Joseph. Obviously, you're supposed to be a writer. You know, that's just been the backdrop for your writing. So I think that leads.
Called Minerva too.
Well, there you go. You can do the voiceover for that movie. Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, there you are. Yeah. In fact, I did this film Dragonheart, and I was like, as a dream come true for me, because it was a dragon, but I thought, my God,
wow.
It is.
There you go. I think that leads on really nicely to the next question, actually, doesn't it, Alexa? I think it.
Yeah. So it sounds as if you've always had the writing itch, but it took a while for you to realise that something was itching.
Yeah. It is funny. It has always been there. I've never totally abandoned that part of me. There was a moment as a late teenager when I thought I was a poet, as we all do, perhaps. But the bit of me that can write some poetry, I'm not going to say how well, but that can write some, everyone can. I will write 3 poems a year, but they emerge on waking from sleep, pretty much fully formed.
Wow.
And I have to get them out and written down with bleary eyes before I forget. And annoyingly, I don't put them all in one thing. They're all over the place. But that has never not been part of my life. They're like, oh, there's that weird thing where every few months I wake up with a poem in my head. And my brother's a singer-songwriter, a wonderful one, and his lyrics come out in a similar way, he told me. He'll be in a supermarket queue and go, oh, God, and he'll have to go and buy some stationery just so
and then write
it down, because he's got 4 lines of a song done. And so there's that little bit which I don't know, but that so I've never felt like it's been sort of dead and in a box, but it's certainly the trawling that book out of me, and the fact that it's a thing. Bless them, I've still got 200 copies here.
I love it that it's in the background of your shop. It's all your books.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, it's very good when I teach acting on Zoom, and I just might mention it.
Here's my book.
I can actually post them from here if you need me. Well, these were the ones I did that are slightly better quality than the Amazon. So I did self-publishing and printed very nicely.
Yeah, I always get my clients to do both. So they get them printed properly, and then you also put them on Amazon.
I've also helped, I think they call script doctoring. So I did my pass on a film for someone a while ago and really enjoyed that. And I think they're going off to try and make it. And then, yes, I'm co-writing a film now. I've written on my course, I had to write a short film this term now. And that was my first original writing, because I've adapted other people's work, other people's plays. I'm co-writing a film. But this was, okay, can we have a short premise for a short film by tomorrow? And I went, and then one plopped out. It's fine. There are always things. And I've really enjoyed writing this little 10-page. It was an exercise in real economy of storytelling and visual storytelling. And it's about, I worked as a carer for old people at home 3 years ago. And it really, I had a terrible year of work as an actor about 3 years ago. And I've got children to feed and rent to pay. So I worked in a cocktail bar by night, and I was caring for old people at home by day for about 6 months. And the caring was so eye-opening to me and so wonderful. Hard work, but wonderful. One old man in particular. So it's from that world I ended up writing a little short film.
Wow.
Yes.
Do you find any of those different types of writing more challenging? I get the feeling that writing about yourself, your memoir, your second one in particular, is the most challenging thing that you have to do. But because obviously they all take different skills and different thought processes. Yes, there's challenging and frightening.
But I'm finding my own fiction novel the hardest thing to finish. And I think I need to stop, take a leaf out of my screenwriting course and write a story map, a vague one. But I've got, if it's an 8-part story, let's imagine, which it might not be, I know the first 6. I've got to really nail the end and then come back end with that. Whereas with even though my book, my memoir too, is hard to write, I know
it's easier. It's easier because you've already got the map. I've written 2 books as well.
Yeah, there you go.
So I've got 2 books here, these 2 here. Yeah. So that's my first one. That's my second one. Easy as, no worries. Could write those in my sleep because it's about stuff I know.
Yeah.
I'm now writing fiction. Same issue as you. It's hard. It's really hard.
The map is the key. And the more you do the map and do the map and do the map, keep doing the map, you'll eventually with the screenplay, we worked this term. Well, it's only a short film, so there's that. But also, even then, they made us do it. We did a premise. We worked on the premise till it was really good.
Yeah.
Then the outline, work on that.
Yeah.
Then a treatment, exactly what. Then a writing statement. Why am I writing it?
Yeah.
And then, okay, they said, let's have it in 48 hours. And you went, oh, 48 hours, plop, it was done.
Yeah.
It was, it was already, the brain had been doing so much work. Yeah. But it is about turning up, isn't it? You have to actually
Absolutely.
go, I'm sitting at this computer 8 o'clock till 10 o'clock minimum.
Right. Yeah.
You've got to turn up. And I'm saying that I haven't turned up for book 2 for a few weeks.
So to wrap this up, because honestly, the gold you have given us is amazing.
Oh, fantastic! Thank you.
It's been brilliant. Thank you.
Oh, it's such a joy. It's my new hobby.
Your new passion, obviously. Yeah. So to wrap this up, what are the 3 key? What for any budding aspiring author listening to this podcast? What are your 3 top tips for someone starting out?
Write 3 inches a day.
Right.
Anything. Okay. Terrible poem, the thing you're really wanting to write, a song lyric, a love letter to an old friend. It's still writing. A really good email to your mother, but actually really think about it.
Yeah.
And then don't take criticism personally.
Mm.
It's a friend. It really is a friend. And then write more.
Plot, maybe, like you said, plan it out.
Maybe a map. It's paradigms, maps, kind of structures. They're not actually limiting. They are actually just, anything can happen. Just because you've built a map, it doesn't mean you know what's around the corner when you actually walk it.
I find that I think I know where I'm going, and then suddenly it's like, oh, actually I could go over there. So,
you build a map. There's a church here, there's a hill there, there's a lake there. I built my story map. Oh well, I know. No, as you write about that church, something pops out from behind a gravestone that you never thought was going to happen. But I think the map will get you to more invention. It's strange. It seems counterintuitive. Well, screenwriting's full of, the world is littered with films that get to page 20, I've got an amazing idea for a movie. And sure enough, the opening scene is amazing.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. And then it'll just hit rocks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just ask, I'm really sorry, Joseph, I'm going to be really embarrassed.
On.
Because you've been amazing. I'm a fangirl of Daniel Craig. I'm sorry. What was he like to work with on Casino Royale?
Well, I tell you what I'll do, because Alexa was due any minute to get my first few pages of book 2.
Right.
You can have that chapter as well. Never edited, awful first ever bash at that chapter. But he was wonderful, lovely. It was you'll read. I wasn't necessarily able to concentrate on how lovely he was, but I met him at his birth. I met Daniel.
There's a surprise.
I met him at his 40th birthday party. That's where I met him. So he was very, very drunk and very friendly when I first met him.
Okay,
but
a nice guy. Nice guy, I'd like to think. Yeah,
it's interesting work, isn't it? I think so, but I've never met him at a dinner party.
Oh, I see. And I hear you dislocated did you dislocate your shoulder in that scene?
No, I broke it.
He broke it.
Oh, you would never know. Did you carry on filming with a broken?
Oh, you'll think I was high as a kite on painkillers. The close-up that I have left in that film, I know when I look at it,
you're high as a kite. A great film. I mean, one of my favourites, obviously. So, anyway.
Brilliant.
Anyway, so I mean, honestly, we cannot thank you enough. You have given so much fabulous information for any aspiring author, and also for those that are going through the editing process, which is a scary prospect for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I think the more successful writers are the ones that are open to criticism, definitely. Yeah. And as the whole series, we've really tried to bash over people's head with this series, is the fact that editors are there to make your book better. They're not there to make it work.
Yes. It's about enhancing
weapons. They're secret weapons.
But people don't get that. People don't get that.
If
it's
people
interesting.
were writing a vanity book, so say you were in an amazing position to have the money to really publish a vanity book and to do it well. If you're going to spend money on your vanity book, spend the money on the editing, because that's the thing that will impress your friends even more than a lovely cover and a nice, when they read it, it'll feel so grown up. I think it's invaluable.
So thank you very much, Joseph. It's been an amazing episode. And this is, I mean, what a way to end our series of all about the editing process.
I'm going to go and listen to others.
Brilliant. We'd love that. And a review would be awesome. So and next series, so this is the end of this one. So next series, series 3, I can't believe we're doing series 3 already, is all going to be about the typesetting and book cover, which is my area of expertise. So you're going to be hearing a lot of me rather than Alexa One next series. And this series is going to be out in September. And then obviously series 3 will be coming out in 2022. Gosh, I know. Joseph, thank you.
Thank you
so much. That was really delightful. Delightful.
You've been awesome. Thank you.
There you go.
Well, and also I'll put a link in to where they can get your book as well.
Yeah.
And so that would be great. Goodbye from us.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
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 Bye.